Howdy, folks. It is Bill and Zoe, the virtual duo. Hey, actually, yeah, I probably shouldn't say it like that because that sounds a little bit too much like that Saturday Night Live skit, the ambiguously gay duo. Yeah,
yeah, that's all right.
Yeah,
yeah.
I got to find another way to sing that. I'll work on it.
You'll figure
we'll
it
work
out.
on it. Hey, so folks, we're feeling chipper because sometimes we get some of that that email. And folks come in showing some love, man. And we got one, Bill, from I didn't get his permission if I could use his name or not.
Okay, just.
But he'll probably know who he is by the gist of what we're talking about in this episode. And he gave us some. It was lengthy, right?
Yeah,
he
read it. It was tremendous.
Yeah, he says I've been wanting to write this for a long time, and I guess it kind of showed. And but don't get me wrong, we read every word, and it hit home. And he gave us some like historical examples and things like that of the stuff that we're going through, and and just wanted us to be encouraged. Now, I don't want to find an area of contention with somebody who's trying to give us some encouragement. But one of the things that he wanted us to feel encouraged about is that with the shadow banning, he says, hey, don't let the shadow banning get you down. Of course, we don't want to let anything get us down, but don't let the shadow banning get you down because the numbers aren't real. And I appreciate that. However, and Bill, like me, you've probably heard people on a few occasions say, man, but those numbers aren't real, man. They're artificial. And you're reaching more of us than you think. A lot of more people are hearing your message than you know. And I'm like, okay, I appreciate that you're saying that the numbers aren't real. However, you can't say that the numbers aren't real when it impacts you so financially. Your brand gets destroyed. Your finances get destroyed. Your ability to promote, even who you are outside of the internet, you become a ghost, right? At least I know I have. Man, I tell you what, it used to be where I couldn't go like 2 feet, especially if it was more, conservative oriented functions. I couldn't go 2 feet into a building without people saying, hey, Zoe, and wanted to talk.
I know the feeling.
Right, get pictures and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I used to be Bill Woodle.
Yeah, right. And then all of a sudden, Bill, I became that guy that Howard Dean talked about. You never see any black guys at the conservative functions unless they're working there, unless they're the help. I became that guy. Nobody knew who I was, and I wasn't there to give a speech. I was there to help set up tables and stuff. I became that guy. Shadow banning does that, all right? Where it's and what makes it, if I can really quick, folks.
Sure.
The difference between being banned and shadow banned is when somebody is being banned for something like that, you basically have these guidelines that say you violated these terms, and you can see where this is going to apply to everybody.
And we're going to shut you down, and we shut you down, basically.
And they shut you down.
Explain shadow banning for those people who may not be familiar with the term.
But shadow banning is when it's very arbitrary. Shadow banning.
So instead of just knocking your channel off and just saying you're done, they turn you down.
Yes.
You have no way of knowing by how much, but they basically turn off that faucet of viewers to your channel.
Right.
And your viewership goes down, and over time your influence goes down, and it's soul destroying because you feel like you're still doing work or better work. And no one's listening anymore. You're obsolete now. That's what it feels like, and that's what it's intended to feel like. That's why it works.
That's why it works. And the thing is, when they're doing that to you, and they're not doing it to other people, it just puts out the idea that it's either all in your head or that it's just not really happening, and nobody can really say for certain that it is happening. But you know it's happening, right? And that's the difference between being banned and shadow banned. People be like, well, how come this person is still able to put out their content? They're just as, I guess, inflammatory or whichever as you, or offensive as you are, but they're able to do what they're doing, but you're not. So I think probably it's just in your head, and maybe you just need to get a real day job. It's that kind of thing. So
you end up gaslighting yourself. You end up believing it. It's like I'm a guy with a great future behind me.
Right. And now. People, and like I said, we appreciate the encouragement, but they're saying, hey, man, thousands of us, we're hearing you. And I'm like, well, if there's tens of thousands of people who are actually listening to us, then that means that there's tens of thousands of people who aren't supporting us. You know, and y'all, it's not about the money per se, but the message is free, sure, but delivering it's not. And that's what we're coming down to, and it makes it very difficult to keep the lights. So basically, you're even as your own enterprise, you're like living from paycheck to paycheck just to keep the lights on, just to keep going. You know, and we do this because we want the truth to go out there. We want this place to be sane again. You know, forget the safe space of this global rubber room. We're talking about a sane space is what we're trying to keep going.
Yeah, sane space. Well, there's a lot to say here. First of all, I read the letter, and it is astonishing, and it really is the kind of thing, and it's not just from him, obviously. These kind of comments from viewers, especially members, are what keeps us going. There's one bright spot in here first before I talk about the shadow banning thing. You were the first person I ever knew who was shadow banned, and I recall at an event somewhere 8-9 years ago, we had the conversation, fresh one for me, but you told me you were getting it all the time. I was like, Zoe, I hadn't seen you for quite a long time. How you been, man? What did you move on to? Did you get a job somewhere else? No, I'm still doing the same thing I've been doing. I'm doing it every day, you said. And I said, I haven't seen any of it. He said, no, I hear that from everybody, is what Zoe said. And I realized how soul-crushing that would be. And then to hear that you're at conservative conventions setting the tables is soul-crushing. But there is some good news here. The first piece of good news is that 2 years ago, a large number of people signed up. And we unbanned you, right? I didn't do it. I'd wanted you to be a part of this from the beginning, just couldn't do it. So 2 years ago, a number of members decided, well, a number of people decided to become members, and now you're back in the game. Now, you don't have the numbers you used to have, neither do I, but your voice is back out there. So that is not only hopeful, that's a critical, right? I mean, if it weren't for the members making a decision to part with this money, nobody would know anything about either of us. The shadow banning thing it's a psychological warfare maneuver. It's designed, if you're banned, you can say to yourself, all right, well, my message is so important, and this is not a lie either. I'm so much over the target, I'm receiving so much flack that they have tried to silence me. Now I'm going to go think of some other way to do this. But shadow banning, especially when it's done over time, which is how it's done, erodes not only your self-confidence, it erodes your ability to believe that you're accomplishing your mission. We're in this game because we love this country and we love everything it stands for, and we're fighting our very best to make sure it returns to its former glory and then surpasses that. And when your metric for success is the number of people who view your message, and this may be a mistake on my part, but that's how it feels, then watching Right Angles, for example, that used to routinely get 25, 30, 40,000 views pretty much overnight. It's not like a slow decline. 30, 30, 20, 30, and then the next week, 17, 14, 11, 20, and then time goes by, and then 7, 9, a good one's 11 now, We're not losing members. I've got 188,000 subscribers on YouTube, and 2,000-3,000 people watch a video. It seems a little odd. So what we learned from the Twitter files is that obviously this is going on, and well, the argument has always been, and it's a good argument, especially against conservatives, because we respect private property, and I think people should be able to do whatever they want on private property. So when we all decided to get off of our blogs and move to YouTube, we were entering somebody else's private property. We had to play by their rules. And so for them to do that, from a theoretical point of view, I have to say that's their business. However, there are two big things here in the shadow banning thing. One of them is we get paid by the view for advertising. If they show us that our video got seen by 5,000 people, but it actually got seen by 50,000 people, then they're committing fraud because they're only paying us on the 5,000. Right? If they are artificially lowering the number that they are showing us, they're not just depriving us of the satisfaction of getting more views, they're depriving us of money that they owe us because they are getting paid by the view. Right? That's what the ad income to YouTube is. So that's just plain fraud. And I know I've hashed this out 1,000 times, but basically the main thing is the law was written in the beginning of this social media era. The law was written when YouTube started, they had to have some kind of legal protection. It basically, here's how it works. YouTube could not police every single video that was put up online. So if I decide that I'm going to put up a video that shows scenes from Maverick, let's say, YouTube had to have legal protection, because otherwise the studio that produced Maverick, Top Gun Maverick, could sue YouTube for the copyright violation. So what the law basically said was that YouTube and all of them, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of it, they're carriers. The legal argument is that we are simply providing a pathway for this information. We have no control over it. We are not responsible for it. And therefore, if this guy puts up a copyrighted issue, you could talk to him. Don't talk to us. We're just the electric company. We're not responsible for what you do with the power. We just provide the power. That's the argument. But when they start making editorial decisions like, this guy you cannot listen to, this guy we're going to amplify, they're no longer a carrier. Now they're an editor. They're a publisher. Yes. They're making editorial decisions on content, and they can no longer claim, oh, we're just supplying the electricity. Now they're supplying the electricity to the people whose politics they like, and they're turning off the electricity of the politics of the people they don't like. And that is a violation of their legal status. And when I see the Twitter files come out from Elon, and at least a Republican-controlled House, I would like some heat applied to these people. Zuckerberg's empire is collapsing under its own vanity, but YouTube, if they could get YouTube to be honest, that would be a win of such proportions I can't even begin to fathom it.
Sure, and the thing about it is, excuse me, getting them to be honest, that's basically getting them to be a whole different person, because that's just who they are. They're dishonest people. They're cowards. They're bigots, and the whole thing.
Can I add just one thing to this? Because the reason they can get away with this, though, is because the internal mechanisms of it are so arcane, right? If I'm running a theater and I'm taking in dollars and I'm handing out tickets, right? An independent investigator can come in, count the number of dollars that came in, count the number of tickets that went out, right? And say, hey, wait a minute, these two things don't match. But when you're dealing with something that is so monumentally complex, billions and billions of data points, billions of them, right? They can hide that in so many different ways that it's virtually impossible to prove it. Everybody knows it, but you can't prove it. Prager University brought a suit against YouTube saying that they did research and found out that their videos were going to 7% of the people who clicked a button saying, I want to see a Prager video. But they couldn't prove it because nobody knows what goes on inside the box. Indeed, man. And for us, we were psyoped before the word started trending, long before it started trending. And one of the heartbreaking things about being shadow banned is how easy it is. It's easy. This started happening to me back in 2011. I saw it happening back then. It was more subtle, but still definitely enough to take notice. And then by the time 2016 came around, it was just like ghost, right? And the thing about shadow banning, another thing about shadow banning that's really disheartening is when you have a lot of people who say that they're shadow banned, and they use it more of almost like a way to boost revenue. And shadow banning does not boost your revenue. It doesn't. I can't, like maybe here, I could probably talk about shadow banning. There's going to be more audience members who can hear it, and I hope you guys do, hear it and consider what it does. It's no joke, right? For my brand, when the shadow banning hit, it makes you invisible everywhere. It shuts you down. You start having to arrange tables for a living because you can't do what you used to do, which is in the free market of ideas, say something that people are willing to pay for to hear or watch to hear anyway, right? Which is the same thing. Yes, and it's one of those things where you're basically gonna have to retool your life, start all over again, and that's the assumption, right? It's like, man, I'll just start over, man. I'll learn a new trade or whichever. Oh no, they get you. It's like, because the state is involved in it. The state's involved not only in the censorship of it, but the state's going to be involved in your income as well. And they're like, oh, you want to go to school or something like that? No, you can't go to school. You made too much money. Mr. Internet sensation, you can't get a loan, right? So you can't get assistants to go to school. And if you try to say, well, fine, I'll just go ahead and make my own money. I'll just get a 9 to 5 and I'll pay for myself to go to school and stuff like that. Oh, no, because you made all this money. We gonna want the taxes. So we're going to garnish your wages.
right? So
Yep.
it's you want to talk about, it's deep, the effect of shadow banning, how deep it goes, folks, and what it does. So it's not just one of those things where, oh, I'm shadow banned and I've been put in Facebook jail. No, it's worse than that.
Yeah,
You know,
you're canceled. Your income is cut off.
Yeah.
You have to change your entire life, and just, I know some people think, well, you should just post to Rumble and stuff. All of the videos that we have on our website at billwhittle.com are linked to Rumble, because Rumble will not pull them down because they don't like them. But the network of Rumble is, I would say, at least 4 or 5 orders of magnitude smaller than YouTube. And a popular video on Rumble, not one of ours, just a popular one, might be seen by 2,000 people instead of 2 million. There is no other place to go. You cannot make a network's value. The value of a social network is the number of people that are in on the network, and that's called the network effect. And while we back our stuff up by going to Rumble, there's no way that we could make a living on Rumble. There's no way that we would reach this number of people on Rumble. So when they actually ban you and cut you off, a good example is a guy who I did 3 or 4 interviews with named Stefan Molyneux. Now, I didn't agree with him about everything, but that's what makes life interesting, right? Difference of opinion is why you have horse races. But he was plain banned, gone, right? He tried to set up something else. No one's heard of him since then. He is removed from the fight because he was too dangerous. He's gone. And I haven't seen any of his videos in years. He may still be putting them out, but I don't see them. And so this is the equivalent of censorship. And when I was talking about legal status earlier, if it is a private company, put aside the whole carrier thing, right? Okay, well, that's not really censorship. It's not a First Amendment protection. I have a right to free speech. I don't have a right to free speech in the middle of your, dinner party on your private property. But if it turns out that there's government pressure or influence, as was certainly the case in Twitter, right? Without question, the FBI and the censors at Twitter are colluding constantly. They've got staff members who are dedicated just to dealing with the FBI, and the FBI says, we want this Hunter Biden laptop story suppressed, so they do, and it costs the election. Now we are talking about government censorship that is protected by the First Amendment, and now you have legal grounds for a serious case.
Absolutely, absolutely. And and once again, they try to make it plausible. I remember when it was happening to me earlier on, and people would say that, oh, it's because you don't use hashtags. I'm like, yes, I do. It's because
they go, it's plausible deniability. They got thousands of reasons why it's not really what it is.
Right. SEOs. It's like, look, man, I got all that stuff. People are being targeted. And folks, this isn't about venting frustrations. Hey, David, he's got a lot of books. Them Psalms of venting out his frustrations. But through all this, I don't have it's not a point of bitterness that consumes me. It's okay, folks, to be frustrated about things. It's okay to be to be angered or have a sense of indignation about these things, but you can't let those things consume you. As the word says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. It's like you can't take that stuff in your sleep and just wake up, poisoned by feeling crossed or anything like that. But I'm in a lot of ways, folks, and maybe it's like a little bit of testimony. I wouldn't trade, the experience of having this, because, shadow banning is one thing, but being in the shadow of the Lord is something totally different. And that's where I find myself. And during this time, folks, I learned things about, my high priest and king that I believed before, but not like this. Mm-hmm. It's something totally different, and the Lord, as Bill would say, it took a lot of, life, beating the stupid out of me, right? And I got a lot of stupid, right, for myself. And I remembered that the Lord says, man, I am life. And if life is beating the stupid out of you, guess who's the one holding the rod? Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, it's like they say that suffering builds character. I just want to say, I actually like my character the way it is now. Thank you. I think I'm pretty much fully formed. I think we can kind of back off on the suffering just a little bit.
Right. And I feel that way a lot myself. But I'm like, I know the Lord knows me better than I do.
He does, and he only tempers the instruments. The tempering, heating, smashing flat, cooling, shock cooling, heating, beating flat, shock cooling, tempering steel. He only does that for the tools that he thinks are worthy of it. He only does that to the people who he thinks could be instruments and who have to be toughened up by the experience. Absolutely. Because otherwise they're just brittle and they'll break.
Yes. We're arrows in his quiver, man. When he, as he says, he chastises those he loves, and he doesn't ruin the soldier before the battle. And when he cuts surgically. It's going through this experience, man. If I was to achieve the level of success, that I had in mind, would I have really sought him? It's like what we were talking about in the last episode. Hey, man, I found my parking spot. I'm good. Yeah. Is just like anybody else, Bill, we vet folks. If a person is going to be part of what it is that we're going to do, we want to know a little something about them. And it's not like God don't know, but God's like, yeah, but this has to play out so other people will see.
But there is free will. So let's find out let's find out if this guy's as good as his word. Let's find out if he's going to stick to what he said he's going to do, or whether or not a hardship, a small one or a large one, is going to be enough to stop him. I need to know this. He's got free will. He's got a choice.
That's right. And that it's almost like that wouldn't even be apostasy, because, like, man, you weren't even with me in the first place. You gave me some lip service.
Yeah, that's right.
And then when things got a little bit rough, you want to run.
Yep.
And now, what kind of person are you, Zoe? What kind of man are you? Are you giving me lip service, or do you really want to take what I've blessed? And it's like I've been blessed with a lot, and then all of a sudden it was taken away. The Lord give it, the Lord take it away, I guess. It's like, hey, man, I gave you some stuff, and you didn't really do what you were supposed to do with it, and I got issues. The Lord, it even says it. It's like, if I gave you this, I expect you to double it, but you're not doubling it according to the way it's supposed to be doubled. Mm-hmm. And I got issues with that. So I have no, like, say, for instance, regrets. I don't have any sort of feel like I've lost time and all that sort of stuff, because my Lord restores. Mm-hmm. And I needed this. I needed this time in the wandering in the desert. Because we've seen a lot where you can read page after page. Hey, the Lord gave you what you wanted, and what did you do? You rebelled against it with it.
Let me just add one final thing here. We'll wrap this up. There are people who are watching this show right now who are not members. And look, I understand times are tough out there. I really do. We lose members who write the most moving letters, the most astonishingly moving letters, like the one we started this conversation with, and basically said, listen, I simply cannot afford this membership anymore. And to those people, we always send a thank you so much for the support that you've given us. But there are people watching this now who aren't members, and there are people who are paying $9.95 a month in order for you to get that message for free. If you are one of those people and you find that you watch this show a lot, I would just simply ask you to consider if it's worth, I think it's 40 cents a day or something, or 40 cents a show. We put out 7 or 8 shows a week here in this little shop of ours. And it's not a guilt trip, it's just a simple appeal. These messages, as Zoe said this before, these messages are free, but bringing them to you is not free. And as far as the tempering goes, the one thing I know for a fact is that I'm going to be here, Zoe's going to be here, Steve and Scott are going to be here. As long as we have the means to pay the electric bill, we're going to be here. And that's a promise.
That's right, folks. And that's, the promise is, if we can let our yes be our yes and no be our no, and just be fortified to be able to do it, is to discuss an actual foundation of virtue. So
there's a link right below.
Yes.
And if you have the means to do it, $9.95 a month, we could really use your help.
Yes, that would be a little bit of a show of virtue, folks. But you're doing that because you want solid virtues.
We're not taking it by coercion. We don't have a gun to your head, because if we could take it by coercion, we absolutely would. But unfortunately, no, we don't.
Yeah,
Stupid philosophy.
And the thing is, those who actually would put a gun to your head, and as they're basically doing right now, with these 87,000 IRS agents that they want to put out there, they think that that's virtue. They think that they're being virtuous, and we need to stop this perversion of this idea of virtue. So, folks, we do hope that you support BillWhittle.com, share these videos, and all that good stuff. All right, folks, thank you so much. For Bill Whittle, I'm Alfonso Rachel. Good night.